Hellraiser. So something I didn't actually mention in one of the earlier videos, but Hellraiser 3 has a song by Motorhead behind it, and assuming that that music video is canon to the Hellraiser series, that means that Pinhead owns Lemmy Kilmister's soul. That's just the neatest of things that you can just add to a series of pointless side diversions and weird expanded universe stuff. Like, if you go by all the Hellraiser canon, you come into the weirdest things. Actress Barbie Wilde has her novel where, well, her novella, well, her short stories where her character, the female Cenobite, leads a feminist rebellion in hell using a puzzle box that she commissions that is able to transform into a sex toy. And Pinhead gets well, he goes off and kills the entirety of hell and then steals Satan's armor, and he parades around murdering people in Clive Barker's sequel to the Hellraiser series. And really, I mean, it goes to show that the people that should know the series the best are just as good at coming up with rather silly stuff as the people that are making the films. Yeah. So Hellraiser Hellworld is about a group of teens slash young adults slash horror movie victims who all own. They all get a golden ticket to a Hellraiser themed party at a spooky mansion where they are all then killed off one by one, followed by a spooky twist, followed by a second and even spookier twist that you'd probably see coming, because as a Hellraiser direct-to-DVD sequel, it ain't over until someone is torn apart by hooks while Doug Bradley and his backup dancers laugh at them. This film is set in a world where people have seen the Hellraiser films, and this is innovative and all in the sense that no one has ever done this before in a Hellraiser film. Even though for a horror movie, that's just about average, really. Characters being self-aware of horror movie cliches was made itself a cliche by Scream, the elaborate send-up of the horror movie genre that then descended into just being another horror movie franchise with loads of sequels, and then spoofed even more by Scary Movie, the parody of Scream that was full of lots and lots of jokes about self-aware horror movie stuff that range from clever to cringy to gross-out humor about a trans woman who is just a man dressing as a woman so she can harass the students under her care. Self-aware characters aren't a new thing to horror, nor characters being aware of their own series, as Nightmare on Elm Street had a film where the actress who played the main girl in the first film had to deal with a real-life version of Freddy Krueger, the child-molesting serial killer and America's favorite horror movie monster. More comparisons between Pinhead and Freddy later in the final thing that I'll be reviewing of this series, but well, I mean, I can talk about it now, really. I don't have too much more plotted for this one. It's not exactly my favourite Hellraiser film. Contrast Pinhead and Freddy. Pinhead is a veteran of the First World War turned sadomasochist from beyond the grave who tends to delight in tormenting his victims but requires an invitation to do so, whereas Freddy is of course just picking victims at random and really anyone on a new Elm Street. Like by the later franchises he's actually legitimately murdered everyone in the city he was going after first and has to start going for new versions of the same Springwood? Springwood, I think it is. New Springwoods to prey upon. And yeah, there's of course the fact that Freddy Krueger is a child molester and was murdered by the parents of his victims, which, you know, doesn't tend to come up that often because we all just associate him with appearing in people's nightmares and murdering people rather than the threat of sexual assault, which is what he was initially killed for. Contrast Pinhead, who is an actual sexual predator of sorts, but his idea of sex is so removed from the normal that really you can just say that he tortures people, and occasionally there's BDSM themes in there somewhere, like mostly the trappings. Like, okay, there's some chains and some leather involved here. Yeah, just a pointless comparison there between two of the only characters to have appeared in more than 8 horror films portrayed by the same actor. That's a rather odd statistic, but it's just Pinhead, Freddy, and the Jigsaw Killer in the Saw franchise. Anyway, self-awareness in films. It can be clever, but the characters just sort of mention that they're aware of the films in Hellraiser Hellworld. Just sort of say that, hey, we all play Hellworld, the video game based on the Hellraiser franchise that exists purely for this movie. It's sort of like a weird MMO, and all the cool kids are playing it and then getting into Dungeons and Dragons moral panic-esque suicide pacts and such, which is what claimed the life of one of the friends of the main characters in this film, which is the reason that they are all being killed in this film. They, as well, there's a bit of a well, one can read into the fact that the main characters are all fans of Hellraiser, but they're in it for the gore and the costumes and the puzzle box, rather than the simple but effective story of the original and the dramatic music and practical effects and stuff that made the first Hellraiser good. They love the trappings of the film series, and those are the things that this film picks up on, the trappings of a Hellraiser film. Yeah, the kids are all picked off and killed across the film for what happened to their friend. This allows, of course, the film to put the blame of violent video games on this horror and such. It's like, it's the video games that got them to do it, despite the fact that, you know, it's also the gratuitous sexual content and nihilism in the Hellraiser films that probably would have gone on with that, because Hellraiser is a film series where neither heaven nor hell seem to really exist, just horrible demons in between, at least until some of the other direct-to-DVD sequels, which actually try and world build beyond, like, the last time Hellraiser tried to do it, and we ended up with Angelique, the demon princess of hell, who, to be fair, was one of the best characters of the series. The kids that are being killed off, they're all having Pinhead show up to them right as they're about to die, and he says some spooky stuff, and he talks a lot in this film. There's a lot of Pinhead for a Hellraiser film, when normally he's just sort of the background character in a good Hellraiser film. Or, in the case of Hellraiser 3, he is there all the time shouting, hamming it up, and being the center of attention. Now, between this surprise twist ending, the traps that are used to kill all the characters, the haunted house setting, the taunts from the villain before their deaths, the scary old guy, and the green color palette, this film feels a bit less like a Hellraiser film and more like a Hellraiser film released during the popularity of Saw. You see, Saw is a series that the creators don't like to call torture porn, about a bunch of adults being locked in haunted houses by a scary old man that kills them with traps. And it released a film a year to cinemas for the entire run of it, about like 7 films in total, 1 film a year for 7 straight years, all on a relatively low budget with flashbacks and twist endings and all sorts. It was campy and such, and above Hellraiser, Saw is my favourite guilty pleasure film series. A film series with more problematic implications and back and forths than the Hellraiser series that people already were watching to see people die in fun and imaginative ways. But Hellraiser always had a bit of an air of dignity that made it not quite like that, where it's sort of like pomp and circumstance and drama and like the occult element. And this film drops a lot of the occult element for the more sort of rusty nails and spikes and stuff aesthetic of the Saw films, rather than, I mean, I guess you had whips and chains and meat and stuff in all the Hellraiser films, but it has, while this film has ideas and novelty, like many of the other Hellraiser sequels, none quite being the same as each other, here we are with a Hellraiser film that just sort of kills people in escape rooms, and by the end of the film, if you've seen Saw, you'll be expecting that Saw music that plays whenever there's a twist in a Saw film to be playing. It's called Hello Zep, and it's named after the original twist in the first Saw film. Why would you watch Hellraiser Hellworld? I don't think there's any point to watching Hellraiser Hellworld except as part of a Hellraiser binge. I don't think I'd rewatch it. This film is a homage to the original Hellraiser series and the things people liked in it, and it's like, ooh, the Chatterer. And it's a good example of why the Hellraiser films continued to be made and the sort of people that liked Hellraiser, but I reviewed this one before Hellraiser Deader for a reason, and that's because Hellraiser Deader grossed me out and scared me at times, and had this uniquely Hellraiser mystery and mystique to it, whereas Hellraiser is just sort of, well, Hellraiser Hellworld is just sort of a Hellraiser film. I will recommend checking out the twist ending, though, because it's genuinely stupid and silly.